Okay, Nate, today you wanted to talk about social credit systems.
Yeah, well, it's interesting in China, in some parts of China, they have social credit systems now, um, where if you, and everyone's under surveillance by cameras and the authorities and being ranked on their performance as good citizens. And if you do certain things wrong, you lose points and then you lose access to things like being able to catch flights and public transport. Go and learn about the social credit system. It's only happening in some parts of China. Um, the thing to understand is, personally, I don't think people should be subjected to such a high level of scrutiny by the state that they should be held accountable for their every mistake under a social credit system. I think it's too strict. Nobody needs to live their life walking on eggshells, constantly worrying that the government's going to deduct points if they make a small mishap. And also, we should be forgiving of people who make mistakes in their lives. But what you got to understand is some authorities absolutely think it should be that way, and some people you meet in the street absolutely think it should be that way. It's very authoritarian. It's like, you think about the surveillance laws in this country. The AFP, Australian Federal Police, and ASIO, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation. If they have reason to suspect you're doing the wrong thing, they can access all of your records, they can access all your computer documents, they can hack your computer, and that's all within their legal rights. Now that's done under the belief of accountability, that we all need to be held accountable for wrongdoing and for breaking the law. Now, it's not that I don't believe that people should be held accountable. I do believe generally that people should do the right thing and should, for the most part, obey the law. But it doesn't leave any room for us disagreeing with what the law says. And again, as I've said in other videos, I bring it back to smoking cannabis. See, if we were under a social ranking system, social credit system, and I was caught smoking cannabis, I'd lose points and then I'd lose access to aspects of society. But the point I make is, in my view, that aspect of the law is subjective, because I see that it is my personal choice to smoke cannabis and I'm not doing anything that harms anyone else. In my opinion, I should be allowed to. So the point I want to make is, to some extent, the law is subjective. It's decided by experts and lawmakers who put a lot of thought into what the law should be. But we also have a right to instruct what the law becomes. In democracy, we have a right to input in what the law is. Because moral right and wrong, and I'm going to do another video about this perhaps next week, but to some extent, moral right and wrong is subjective and decided by the individual, which is why I'm hesitant to allow the state to come in and impose things like social ranking systems where they strictly enforce their version of what is right and what is justice, because people in the community might disagree with the state's position on what the law should be. But some people absolutely think it's your social responsibility to be on impeccable, perfect, flawless behaviour all the time and to never make a mistake and never do anything wrong. And that's clearly the attitude of lawmakers in China, since they have this social ranking system which deducts points. It's so strict. Do we really need society to be that strict? Where you can't make a single mistake, do we have to abide every law exactly to the T and never do anything wrong? I break the law every day when I smoke cannabis, and I don't give a shit because I think it should be legal. See, the law is subjective and decided by the individual. I say, the law says I shouldn't smoke cannabis. I say, get fucked. I smoke cannabis, my choice, my business, not bothering you. What concern is it to you? And once upon the time, the law said it was illegal to be homosexual. Now, we've seen that subjective view has been overturned, and now it is not illegal to be homosexual, and now homosexuals are allowed to get married. So again, another example of how laws evolve and change, and how law is subjective, and right and wrong, moral right and wrong, is decided ultimately by the individual. So in my new book, 22nd Century Man, This is how it works in 22nd Century Man in the new book I'm writing. Society has gone very, very extreme far left, and your entire life and schedule is decided by the state, and this is under the guise that the state will determine what is the healthy lifestyle for you to live. So the state says you should live exactly this way because that's healthy, and it's your social responsibility to live a healthy life. So the state says at 7 o'clock in the morning you get up and have breakfast, then at 7:30 you exercise for an hour, then you get an hour of recreation time, and then at 9:30 or whatever you're off to work, and when you get home you eat your dinner at 5 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock you get an hour of recreation time, then at 8 o'clock you're expected to do something else, all determined by the Schedules Department. It's called the Schedules Department in my new book, 22nd Century Man. And in 22nd Century Man, you have about 3 or 4 hours of free time in each day of your life outside of your determined schedule. And the only way you can win complete control over your schedule is to volunteer a certain amount of your free time hours to community work and charity work. And if you do that for long enough, you will earn freedom points, which will accumulate to a point where you're granted control over your schedule. So that's what's happening in my new book, 22nd Century Man. It's a super conservative, super strict society where we're expected to be absolutely perfect at all times and to live an absolutely healthy lifestyle determined by the state. Now, I want to make a projection that in the next 20 to 30 years, there's going to be voices in this country, particularly in the establishment, pushing for Australia to adopt a social credit system, and I certainly hope it never goes that way. It's very 1984. But there are people out there, and you will meet them, who will say they think that this is how it should be, and I find that personally very concerning. So my projection is that we may end up with a social credit system in Australia in the next 30 years. So tell me in the comment section whether you think we should all be held accountable to a strict and conservative and rigid view of moral right and wrong, and whether we should all be living under a social credit system, or whether you're more of a freedom activist and you believe that we should have more free choice about how we live our personal lives. Let me know, guys.